this is your first time tuning in, you're going to be excited for today's guest. We are going deep into podcasting. Yeah, we run a podcast, but today we have a podcaster on our show. We're going to go into details in a moment about that. But before we do, this show is all about interviewing the best and brightest entrepreneurs down here in South Florida, finding the do's and don'ts of running a successful business. We got Dr. Roland Kidwell back in the shrimp tank today. Dr. Kidwell, how's everything going today?
Wonderful, wonderful. First week of summer school, and we're in a situation where masks are recommended indoors, not required. That ended. So,
FAU said no more masks in here?
No more masks.
Wow.
Excuse me. Masks are recommended.
Recommended.
Not required. Right. In other words, they won't stop you and do something.
Well, is there a lot of students here over the summer?
There's a fair bit. I mean, they're not. They're still getting back into it. I think probably they're home taking their classes online as much as they can. We still have that model, with hybrid model, but yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different. I actually saw students in the building today. There are some coming to class, some are doing it virtually. So yeah, it's things are getting back to normal. We also started our summer boot camp last night. First time we've been doing it in the summer, and we're reaching out to a variety of different elements of the community to both diversify the instruction as well as to diversify the clientele, and we're pretty excited about that. We had some first-time entrepreneurs, some students. We have some experienced entrepreneurs who are taking the class to try to grow their business. And you can still register, okay? You can register up till May 26th. And if you want to do that, go on to Instagram and go to @FAU Adams Center and click on the little thing in the bio. It'll take you to the place where you can register for this. Or, just Google FAU Adams Center Boot Camp, and you can get in, and you will be able to catch up quick. We'll get the materials out to you, the workbook authored by the famous Shrimp Tank co-host, Dr. Kevin Cox, and it's fun. We had a good time last night.
So let me ask you a question. When these students are in your classroom, do you get a sense of who's going to be successful after doing, tons and tons of work around entrepreneurship? Are there any clues?
I think you can see passion. I think you can try to harness it. I think you do see that. You do see students who have a good connection to customers. I think you see students who can carry the whole thing out. So I think you do get that. And the thing about a lot of this, the first idea, the first business they come up with, it's not any good, but you can see they're an entrepreneur, they're going to come back. And a lot of times when you're evaluating business plans with students, you're basically trying to figure out who that person is and are they an entrepreneur? And I think you do see some of that. You definitely do see some of that come out.
Well, let's talk about hitting 150 episodes.
Yeah.
Last week was the day it happened, and want to pick your mind on that. What have you learned from all these past guests? We have a big audience out there that always wonders what to do when opening up a business or running a business, and you got to hear 150 different episodes coming into this studio. What have you learned?
A lot. I mean, I think what I've learned, one element is just how hot entrepreneurship is down in South Florida, and how people can put together different approaches to success in different industries. And there are common threads that run through that, with passion we talked about before, coming back from failure, being able to execute, and then, connection to the customer, putting the product and service to the customer. I mean,
Yep.
You see that reflected. And it's a pretty exciting time to be down here. We have a lot of different types of businesses, different types of industries we've seen on the shrimp tank, and little tidbits here and there. And also connecting the guests to the students. We've had several guests work on projects with our students. We had one of our shrimp tank guests last night speak to this boot camp, and it was very valuable. And so,
Sure.
we're learning a lot, and we hope to learn more, and I'll celebrate when we get to 200.
Yeah, and what I've learned is, of all these industries, you don't have to go after the shiny ones like Facebook, Instagram. I think everyone chases what's hot. But when we look at all these past entrepreneurs that come onto this show, they're just good at what they do in their selected fields or their industries. And they have passion behind it. They wake up early, they get to work, and they try to avoid all the, negative behaviors, that, are all around them. Of course, down here in South Florida, there's a lot of that. And, they're hard workers. They don't let, the other people around them pull them down. You know, they have thick skin. So I notice a trend on that end. So let's get into our guest today. You know, if you want to watch all these other episodes, go hit shrimptankpodcast.com up, check them all out, or any of your podcast stations. But today we got Sebastian Rusk, you know, here in the Shrimp Tank today. He is the founder of Podcast Launch Lab. Just hit 200,000 views, Sebastian. So we're excited to learn all about podcasting, why everyone out there should have one. So tell us about your backstory.
Sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here with you guys. Great to be back in Boca Raton. I think I've been to this specific building before for a networking event. Have you hosted networking events?
Yeah, down here in the atrium, sure.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say you had a class and you got an F.
Wait.
We see
No.
that as a
I didn't
common
go to-
trend with entrepreneurs, right?
I didn't go to college.
You know, they love telling the F story. Like they failed this one class or this, you know, or out of college, right?
Well, that's kind of the beginning of the story is that I couldn't stay in school when it was free. So as an entrepreneur, it was just in my blood that when I graduated from high school by the skin of my chinny chin chin, that I wasn't going to pay to go to school when I wouldn't go when it was free, that I was going to figure out my own way. So I had a kid at 20, which I don't recommend as a game plan and a life plan by any stretch of the imagination. However, it ended up working out, and I took a job, left South Florida when I knew that she was on the way, and went to work for an internet company. And then later moved. It was too cold in Chicago, way too cold. So spent a year there, got an opportunity in Southern California, and I said, let's go. So I went out there and had a great year as a sales rep, and came back and I did the numbers, and I go, wait a second, I'm 23 years old. I made my first $100,000, and this guy made $750. Those numbers are never going to work out for me. I keep 100, you keep 750. I want to flip that. So I took the Salesman of the Year trip and came back and quit and became an entrepreneur. And I was 20. I just kept telling myself, I'm going to create stress, like financial stress. Like, I'm going to create it. Like, I don't need Bill from accounting to tell me my check's ready every 2 weeks. So I started my consulting business working with mortgage brokers and real estate professionals in Southern California. And I would make their phone ring all day with people that want to refinance their home. And then the market crashed in 2008. I thought I had all the answers. Just ask me. And I found myself back in South Florida. March of 2008 with a duffel bag and my daughter. I ended up raising my daughter on my own, which was always, I mean, if being an entrepreneur isn't enough, let's just throw a single dad into the mix. But again, I've been extremely blessed, and it really, really did work out. When I moved back in 2008, I didn't know what was next, but I knew that I wanted to prevent what took place from ever happening again, meaning get in there, find a great business, make really good money, and then spend it all. So there was no game plan for me in my 20s, and I think that's pretty common now that I look back. And in your 20s is rifled with bad decisions, which is a good time to make them and adjust accordingly. But 2010, I had a big awakening moment. I spent a couple years sucking my thumb. Poor me. I think everybody was kind of down and out in 2008 with the recession. And I had this big awakening moment, and I woke up and I was like, I'm going to go see Tony Robbins. I'm going to go walk on fire. I need to awaken the giant within. So I called a friend of mine that worked for Tony at the time, and she gave me all the details on the event that was going to be in Long Beach that July. And she connected me with a mutual friend of hers that actually works with Tony and is part of his core team of 6 that travels with him and still with him to this day. And she introduced me to her, and I'll never forget linking up with her for dinner a few days later and her asking me, what's next? And I sat there and I looked at her and I said, I don't know. And she looked at me and said, that's a problem. And I said, why is that a problem? She goes, while you sit here and twiddle your thumbs going, I don't know what's next, the world's missing out on Sebastian. Whatever that is, whatever next is, you got to figure it out. I mean, you're doing this whole social media thing. You sent me that video you filmed this week, your energy, the way you show up with video. You could start a YouTube channel. And that conversation literally inspired me to create a brand called Social Buzz TV, and that's where I would set out to evangelize that I was starting the best social media company on the planet. 2010, very, very early on. No car, no money, a bus pass, and a skateboard. That was the last thing I bought before I left California because it's a superb means of transportation, and I'm glad that I did. I'd stash it in the bushes, go to the networking event, and play the part. Once I started to evangelize what I was doing, I would start to go to networking events. That's the way I would do it. And the way you'd let me in the door is I would have a flip cam, and I would film a video recap of your networking event. And I'd say, hey, listen, I'll give this to you. Just tell your people about it, and then let me in the door. who's going to say no to that? To a guy in a bow tie with a camera, like no one says no to that. So I rinsed and repeated that model for about a year, and then I started doing my own networking events. And then people would say, "Hey, I saw you at a networking event. I went to your networking event. Can I sponsor your event? Hey, I need help with social media." So I would do a networking event, and then I'd invite people back the next day for a boot camp. And I teach everything I know about social media in 3 hours. And I charge you $50 a head. So you came to my networking event. You spent 3 hours with me for me to educate you on social media, which no one knew anything about.
Yeah,
in
back then, 2010.
Clueless.
Yep.
So by the end of that last phase of we met at a networking event. You came to my boot camp. There was an opportunity for a conversation. So people would say, I need to figure this whole Facebook thing out. I need to figure this YouTube thing out. I need to start creating content. Will you hire me? So I actually launched Social Buzz TV, had no revenue model, and then launched the agency 9 months later after I figured out what I could do. Because eventually people were giving me $200 here, $300 there. Will you manage my Twitter account? And I'm like, is this even real life? I'm getting paid to play around on the internet. So, but 2 years after that, I launched in 2010. 2011 really started being able to monetize and make money. And then 2013, I wrote a book and told the story about it, which was Social Media Sucks If You Don't Know What You're Doing. So that launched my speaking career, and I really found my passion of being on stage as an event MC specifically. I still do a tremendous amount of speaking, but my gift is being the hype man in the corporate world for large corporate events and conferences. So 2016, we all have these, what am I doing moments, especially as an entrepreneur. I mean, they happen daily. You know,
of course. You get used to doing the same thing over and over again. It's Groundhog Day. And,
right.
And you watch other people around you doing some creative things, and
correct.
you get the itch.
Correct. Absolutely. And I just had an awakening moment. I said, I just don't want to be considered a social media guy. There's nothing wrong with that. But I don't want to do that. I believe that I was designed for something far greater than that, and I want to find my place in the world. I'm not going to leave the digital marketing world. I've got too much time invested in it, but I want to find my niche. And somebody said, "Hey, you ever thought about creating a solution for helping people start a podcast? You've always had a podcast." And I thought, and I also grew up in a radio station. My dad was a DJ for 30 years. I had zero intention of following in his footsteps career-wise, but buddy told me a couple months ago on the golf course when I was sharing the story that our genes are very powerful, and it's pretty funny. My dad and I, trade war stories and compare notes back and forth with his traditional radio experience, and now we're podcasting his app. But yeah, I went all in 2016 and created the podcastlaunchlab.com, which is a turnkey podcast launch solution to take marketers and entrepreneurs from idea to iTunes in 90 days or less. And I haven't looked back. We phased out the rest of the agency business, anything really social media related. I phased out. I put the blinders on and said, as a podcaster, I'm a product of the product, so I'm qualified to sell the product. And I believe that we're just now entering the infancy of podcasting for a technology that's 2 decades old. So if you can riddle me that, it's mind-blowing, but I blame technology.
So tell us some success stories. Like when people open a podcast, they kind of have an idea that they want to maybe gain some traction around their other core business, I'm assuming. But tell us some of the big success stories after launch.
It's been a lot of similar strategies to what you guys do, where your primary focus, what you do on a daily basis, isn't the content for the podcast, but it complements it.
Of course.
So that seems to be the biggest strategy. I met a guy by the name of Gary Vaynerchuk about 11 years ago, and he forever altered my path and changed my perspective, became just an incredible mentor and friend, and really opened my eyes to what was possible with all this. And he'd always preach that game of whatever you're passionate about, start talking about it, start blogging about it, start creating content around it. There's somebody out there that wants to talk about it, that wants to consume that content, even if it's not what you do 9 to 5 with your job or with your business or your family business or whatever the case is. And I just think it's going to continue to be that way because we're living in this creator world where the traditional model of big brands dominating everything because they have the budgets are going away, because the big brands are now consulting these creators to go in and make their story a reality.
So the average podcast lasts 9 episodes. So I understand.
Depends which week.
And
Pre-COVID or
how do you
after,
get
right?
to repetitive and where catch it? Why do they fail? I guess what I'm saying is, why do they only last 9, 10 episodes? What's missing there?
I think it's unrealistic expectations when you first start the show. First of all, you're not clear about why you want to start the show. So if you get real clear on your why and you know who you're serving and who you're reaching out to, that why then creates momentum and allows you to, it keeps you grounded too. Because every time you're ready to throw in the towel, do we really want to do this? that old quote, next time you think you want to quit, remember why you started. I just think it's a lack of commitment initially.
Okay.
We're not being willing to say, listen, it takes 18 months to build a foundation. You guys have been doing this how long? 3 years?
3 years.
And you probably still feel like you're just getting started. And it's
We do. We feel like we're in I would say the second, third inning.
Right, exactly. But because you had the time to get those reps in, to be able to cut your teeth and break your nose a little bit and find out what works and what doesn't work. And that's all part of the creative process. It's all part of the entrepreneur process, being able to suck at something new.
The first 10 episodes are the hardest. It's uncomfortable being on film or on audio, knowing other people are listening to you.
Right.
I remember all of us, Roland, myself, Kevin, we were in the room, right next to all these, entrepreneurs that we had coming in. And it was nerve-wracking every week coming into a studio and feeling uncomfortable. And eventually, breaking through that was probably episode 20, right? So a lot of people shut it down, and there's a lot of hard parts. Getting your first 10 guests is extremely hard as well.
Yeah, I mean, listen, going to the gym's hard. Being overweight's hard. I mean, choose your hard. So it's the same process with the creative process, whether it's a YouTube channel or it's a blog or it's a podcast. If you can be anchored, and that's really what I instill in my students when somebody comes to me and says, I spend half my day talking people out of starting a podcast. Mm-hmm. Because I sell with a level of integrity where I'm here to do what's best for that person, not to sell a solution that's not going to work. The last thing, if you hire us and you don't launch a podcast, we both lose. So there's no upside to that not happening. But I think it goes. There's a number of factors. I to sum it up, it's usually a commitment factor, and then everything else around that are all the excuses and reasons why not to. But if you focus on staying the course, I just believe that you guys have lived this over the past 3 years, and the opportunities that happen when you say, tell me some amazing things that have happened over the past 3 years. You're like, my goodness, we'll be here till next month, because it's the unexpected stuff that we had no idea that because we started a podcast, this was going to happen.
So tell us what happened to you when you got doing your podcast or other people's podcasts.
So
yourself, what happened?
I think the main thing is the credibility factor, and that was the thing I learned early on with Gary too. And he said you got to launch your personal brand in addition to your business brand, because your personal brand in perpetuity is your reputation, and that just rattled my cage. Because everyone cares about what everybody else thinks, regardless of what they say. So your reputation, especially now with the internet and cancel culture, but Gary's been beating that drum for 10 years, saying the internet will reveal us all, 100%. I mean, I go back to the old, as I was raised. Listen, as long my grandfather used to say, as long as if you're always doing the right thing, you don't have to worry about, So that's even more relevant now. But I think being able to monetize my show by identifying guests that don't have a podcast has been one of the biggest success stories. And I didn't even really mean to do it. It was like if I had you on the show and we're talking about what you do, and at the end you're crushing it on LinkedIn and content and everything, but there's no podcast. I'm like, dude, when do you start a podcast?
And then they come to you and you teach them how to do it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So we got a 90-day program we run them through. That's our flagship program. That's
so break it down. Travis, our producer, sitting over here, and he decides he wants to go out and do a show himself, right? He has an idea in his mind, which he has come to me before, right, Travis? And, but he doesn't know what direction to take. Assuming we had no microphones, right? Just say he has nothing. What do you do next? Give us that 90 days.
So the first things first, we're going to figure out why we're starting a podcast. Because that goes back to the commitment, because we can tie that right into the commitment level. So once we get clear on our why of starting a podcast, then we can figure out what we're going to call the podcast. Let's come up with a name.
Okay,
we got a name. Great. Excellent. The Shrimp Tank. Fantastic. What's the Shrimp Tank going to do? Who's it going to serve? What kind of conversations are we going to have?
Sure.
Oh, we're going to do this. I want to interview entrepreneurs. I want to talk about interesting things. I want to collaborate with FIU. I want it to be this. Okay, cool. We got a concept now. We got a name now. Now it's time to move into branding. Let's get your cover art, your branding, your podcast logo, if you will, hammered out. And once that's done, we move into intro, your outro. We write the scripts for that. We do it together. Figure it out. What's it look like? You're the one greeting people on the show. You're the one sending them off on each episode. So we dial that in, and then we get a trailer or a teaser or whatever you want to call it, a promotional piece recorded, and then walk through the whole process of getting your podcast hosted, getting it distributed to iTunes or Apple Podcasts, whatever they call it this week, and getting your distribution situated, and then getting you in a position where we're planning out your first 7 episodes, not scripting your first 7 episodes. You do not script a podcast, as you guys know, but you do put together an outline, and you do have some show notes, so that can later on become your actual show notes for your podcast. But I help you put some structure to what that looks like. And we launch with your first 7 episodes. because it used to be the old number was 6 or 7 was before you went to the podcast graveyard. Now it's 9. People are getting better. We're making progress here.
So you actually set it all up before anybody does their first podcast. What happens, I would think usually it's organic and people just get going.
Well, yeah. Well, we launched with our program's 7 episodes. We can launch with like 2 or 3.
Okay.
By design. First of all, if it's 7, we've already beat the odds. Whether it's 7 or 9 before you hit pod fade, with the 7 episodes, but we can launch with 2 or 3.
Okay.
And then we've got 4 or 5 in the hopper moving forward. So if you continue to record, you've always got 3 to 5 episodes ahead. And that is, if you're listening to this right now and you're thinking, I've been thinking about starting a podcast, I need to streamline it, I'm a busy guy, I got life, family, business, etc. Make sure that you are bulk recording and you've got some episodes in the hopper, because there's nothing worse than sitting down and staring at a microphone. I don't care how many notes you have, but having to do it every single week, unless it's a format like this. So you got something really cool going on. You got the studio going on, you got the collaboration here. That it makes 100%, but you guys still put a significant amount of planning into each episode and how it all works. But and then we're ready to launch. We pick a launch day, and we drop the trailer before the launch to let people know it's coming soon, and subscribe early if you'd like to, and figure out how to create some micro content, audiograms and whatnot, so we can market each episode. Very important, because podcasts are extremely difficult to market. So you've got to be able to take the video replay and the audio replay and be able to repurpose that into micro content for stories and for TikTok and Instagram.
It's overwhelming now.
Well, let me ask a stupid question. Isn't a podcast social media? I mean, you're talking about moving from social media away from social media. What's the difference there?
I think that it was the great question. The scope of work that I was doing. So as an agency, our job was to make sure that we're creating content for you on all fronts. So we're managing your Facebook page. So that requires babysitting people, community managers, and creating content. And I didn't see the benefit in actually, I wasn't passionate about the work. Because if I was going to be able to do it on like a Gary agency level, $100 million a year agency level, like social work, big brands, Pepsi, Budweiser, etc., I wasn't interested. And I knew that I could carve out my own piece of the cake with podcasting and still stay in the social space. I know a ton about social. I'm very, very much involved and ingrained in the ecosystem of social, but I don't want to run your social media accounts for you. I guess that was the biggest distinction there. And plus, I knew that podcasting was going to take over radio as we knew it. No one was in a hurry to jump in their car and listen to another radio ad or DJ talk over their favorite song that they play every hour on the hour. It's just not existent. I think the closest thing to radio other than podcasting would be internet radio, or not internet radio, satellite radio.
How have you scaled this business? How do you do that?
It's all been through referral. It's carefully cultivated relationships and lots of writing books, speaking, consulting. Saying yes a lot, saying yes, showing up, volunteering.
But do you have others you've trained to be able to deliver the podcast school?
No, not yet. We're not there yet.
Okay.
I wanted to, not as a control freak angle, but more of just, I've got the time to invest in it now. It's a high ticket program. It's not for everyone. So it's not, people aren't beating down our doors yet. They will be as it becomes more of the norm here. But it's been enough of a sustainable business that I've been able to manage the business and the clients at the same time. We're going to move in the direction that I won't be available to service all the students. And that it'll be your typical, you can pay this much and have.
Is it a one-on-one?
It is a one-on-one for a portion of the program, and then you're off to the races recording. My goal is to get you behind that microphone as soon as possible. We can't do that before we get all of our I's dotted and T's crossed on what.
How many podcasts are there in the United States? Do you have any sense of that?
Yeah, well, there was close to 1 million at the end of 2020. And then about 250,000 or about 200,000 fell off. So we capped the year at the pandemic. I think it was it was a little anticlimactic. People got in there and were like, we're starting a podcast, and that got us over.
I felt like everyone was
it was. Podcast equipment sold out on Amazon. I mean, it was
everything.
How else was there to do it?
Microphones, everything was.
I was a guest on one. It's never happened. I've never seen it. So.
Right.
So there was a spike, and then they all had.
Yeah. So then I think we finished up the year at about 800,000, which that excites me because people say I had a call earlier today, and someone said, "Do you think it's too late to start a podcast?" I'm like, "No, absolutely not. It may have been too early." A couple of years ago, but I think you're just now. We're like I said before. We're moving. We're in the infancy of a technology that's 2 decades old, which is mind blowing. And you've got to strike while the iron's hot, because as things become popular, like Bitcoin, everyone and their brother is an expert in these specific spaces on here. But I firmly believe if a business and a brand takes their podcast strategy serious, they can, in fact, become a media company. And you can monetize the podcast. And you can have the podcast not only pay for itself, but it can be an additional revenue stream for an insurance agency, for a plumbing company, for a general contractor. So,
again, enough listeners, of course, you get some sponsors. So how much does it cost on a basic level? If someone in our audience wants to set up something super basic, like coming down to how much they are going to spend on equipment, to how much the back end's going to cost, not your services in particular, or maybe your services on the higher end. Like, what are the ranges? Give our audience an idea.
So if you want to do this by yourself, you 100% can. You can do it today. So you download an app called Anchor.fm. It's free. It's owned by Spotify, I think. Spotify owns them, yeah. If you can have any corded headphones with a microphone, work, a quiet space, your closet, it's a great place to record. If you've got a topic, if you want to interview people, you can do that too. And it doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Get a proof of concept down and better understand what you want to talk about and actually start recording. See if you've got something and do it for free first.
Sure. And
see if you're like, I love this. This conversation's great. I did like 2 beta episodes on Anchor. Had a great conversation. Like, I'm ready. Cool. Let's go to Amazon. Let's get a USB mic. Spend $100. Buy a USB mic, plugs right into your computer, and you're recording your episodes. There's so many solutions available now, especially with Zoom. It makes it so easy.
What percentage do you think of the people enter this with the idea of monetizing it, and how many just want to hear it just to hear themselves talk?
Wow. Have you heard my show?
Oh yeah.
I think that everyone has the intention, especially if you're in business, to be business minded. If you're doing this as a hobby, because I just took a call on my way up here from a lady that does walking tours in Plano, Texas, and man, she is just over the moon about these. She does want to monetize her show, but somebody like that's extremely passionate about what they do, and sometimes it's just complimenting your brand. It's not there to monetize something. It's there to complement your brand and to be able to say, this is really interesting. What else do these people do? Or what else is this all about? Or what's behind this whole? Everybody wants a peek behind the curtain. A podcast is a great leader to be able to have people go, so what else is going on?
Yeah, unfortunately, sometimes people think they're going to make $1 million doing a podcast.
Yeah, you're not Joe Rogan. None of us are.
That's like the 0.1%, right? Of the 1%.
You got to remember, a guy like Rogan had an existing career. Guy's been a stand-up comic. He's had a phenomenal run with UFC. He had a decent platform to be able to, but they had no clue what they were doing when they started that podcast. They spent years behind just 2 microphones, just rapping, having conversations, just him and his producer, until they actually figured it out. And it took a while to gain some traction here. But I think that's always a reference point for people. They're always like, well, what about Joe Rogan? I'm like, let's leave him.
Yeah.
That's like saying, well, what about Gary Vee? How do I do that?
Thing, right? Everyone chases the fraction, right? Which is what's going on with Bitcoin. No different. And then it all came crashing down yesterday. Travis, you got a question for him?
Yeah, I do. What are the popular topics or genres that you see with successful podcasts? Like in the old radio days, if it wasn't music, you had sports, news, or comedy. Are those the 3 categories that you see are the most common, or what is it?
They're really not, because everybody's ideas are so different. I mean, the concepts and ideas that I see come through, it's not specific genres. If it was, I'd be looking for people that want to start a sports show. People want to start a business show. It's mainly business related, I guess, would be the main demographic. Our target market is marketers, entrepreneurs, authors, speakers, coaches, people of authority that know that their natural next step is to start a podcast, just like it would be to write a book. So that's the main. And then from there, it can be a variety of things. I know that's not a direct answer, but it's not. It's changed significantly. Those silos have expanded. They still exist. I've been curious about card trading lately. I've been hearing all about these sports card trading. It's a whole world out there.
NFTs.
This whole deal. So I've been looking into it a lot more. And of course, a great place to find content is YouTube or podcast to learn more about what's what. But you can find a podcast about just about anything these days. So it's a broad answer because that's kind of the reality of where we're at. I wish we could go. Man, these sectors are really killing it, but I think it's just such a wide variety.
Yeah, everybody finds their own niche. It's more diverse now.
Correct.
That's
right.
awesome.
It's personalized too. A radio show was all about the radio station and the radio network. You just happen to be the person on that network and on that radio show. It wasn't all about you. Podcasting, it's all about you because you're the host. It was your idea. You launched the show. It's all your fault.
Well, cool. We're going to take a quick commercial break here from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we're going to jump to our Hot or Not segment of the show.
Insurance companies, it's time to step out of the past and into the future with Oz's latest solution, Rainmaker. Reduce 10 years of human work to merely days using intelligent automation to process contract and claim entries. Increase job satisfaction, productivity, accuracy, data insights, and ROI while decreasing the time spent on projects. It's a no-brainer. Follow the hashtag #MakeItRain on LinkedIn and Twitter, or visit followoz.com/rainmaker to learn more. That's FOLLOWZ.com/REINMAKER.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. As a reminder, you can check us out on Facebook Live. If you're not watching, only listen to audio, it's at Shrimp Tank Boca, as well as on Instagram. We do clips every Thursday at 4 p.m. Sebastian, on this part of the episode, it's called Hot or Not. We're going to jump into a subject and go into detail why it's obviously hot or not related to business. Okay, let's.
Am I supposed to use the signs right here?
It's up to you. Our audience is on audio or watching on Facebook Live, so either or. Let's talk about podcasting in particular over Zoom. Is that hot or not?
Yeah, it's definitely hot.
It is, because sometimes everyone, obviously Zoom just blew up in 2021, 2020. It's so cheap, right? $14.99 to have an account and buy a $100 mic or $20 mic, hit the record button, you got a podcast, right? And go release it on YouTube. But when it comes to quality, when it comes to just everything that revolves around Zoom, it is still hot to use.
It is for the average person starting a podcast that's not knee deep into the podcast process. If you're really looking to go, okay, well, we've been doing the show, we've been consistent with it, and we're looking to improve the quality a little bit, then you're going to look at other solutions like Riverside FM is getting a tremendous amount of hype these days. Squadcast.fm, they've got a lot of growing pains too. And what I found at these platforms, I personally still use Zoom because I'm still able to record through my Rodecaster through Zoom. And it works out okay. You do lose a little bit of audio quality, which is a complaint. But Zoom now has the opportunity to be able to record 2 separate audio files. That does help that process out. But we teach to start with Zoom.
We did it for a short period when COVID hit. We went 11 episodes where we did some fireside chats. The one issue that we had was pretty much, if Facebook Live didn't work, right? Like all of a sudden you're sitting there, like the guests are in the room, and you're like, it's broken. It's not working. And of course, Facebook has a lot of bugs. I mean, we have in our own studio here. Sometimes we go live and the quality is not there. Obviously, there's a lot of wires in this room, but we've had issues on Zoom, Facebook Live, which stinks. Then you're locally recording and then you're putting it out, and then the quality of the Facebook Live is a lot better than when you download the Facebook Live.
Well, that's why that's why solutions like Riverside.fm, I don't personally use them. I just signed up last week. Mark Savant turned me on to Riverside FM because they record into the cloud. So it doesn't matter what your internet connection is or what your local machine is getting. It records that interview into the cloud. So it's superior quality from what I understand. And it's not much more. It's, $10, $15 a month. They're all around the same. And I really think that there's going to be a giant wave of the next Zooms, if you will. Not specifically for video conferencing, but recording a podcast to be able to capture video and audio with quality. I think there's going to be a tremendous...
Well, it's so inexpensive. I mean, anyone under the sun could have a podcast, which is what we saw in the beginning of the COVID days, correct, right? Because everyone's like, I could do a podcast over Zoom. Everyone's home. And, look, people were bored. It's a nice way to chat with others, over Zoom. But then they realized, wait, this is a pain in the butt. People aren't showing up on podcasts, right? They have to book a calendar up, and then they have to start putting on all the different social feeds. And then all of a sudden, they're, wait, we're not making any money. And then they fade off, of course.
Right.
So how about your business, podcast education? Is that hot or not? How many people are in this niche?
I don't know of a lot of them. I only know one Sebastian Rusk, so I try to stay in my lane. There are companies out there that do help people start a podcast, that educate people on podcasting. I make friends with a lot of my peers because I firmly believe that whoever's going to do business with me may not do business with you and vice versa. And there's enough to go around, and we're still so early on. And plus, I've integrated my personal brand so much into the business and what we're doing. People really are buying into me. Of course, they're buying a solution. They want to start a podcast, but they are really investing in the fact of being able to work with somebody who's a peer, who's an actual
So
podcast
specialization more so with you,
Correct.
and these other companies are probably having other things that they do. as part
Correct.
of
So in the digital agency world, a lot of that can happen. Content creation, content houses, absolutely. We create your YouTube content. We create your Instagram content. We help you create a podcast. That's just another buzzword, I think. Where's that? I saw the value on being able to just stay the course and put the blinders on, even when I was in the wild, wild west, and I was beating the drum that no one was listening to.
Okay. Got one? Go ahead. This is Paige, our coordinator from the FEU Adams Center and Management Programs Department.
So you've mentioned a couple of times about personal branding, and earlier you mentioned podcasting or a book. Would you say podcasting is hot or not over a book?
No, I would say that they're both equal. Yeah, because they feed each other. My book feeds my podcast. My podcast feeds my book, and they all contribute to more speaking opportunities, increased credibility, yeah, I think that they're kind of a close tie. They
That
really
was
are.
certainly one of the ideas to get your brand out there is to write a book.
Sure.
The question is, what's in the book? You know, that's
Well, start a podcast and record 25 episodes, and take your favorite 10 and turn them into chapters.
nice.
So
We have a couple volumes now we can work with, right?
Write a book. Look
You
at
write
this.
a book.
yeah, podcast to book, absolutely. I talk about my second book came out in December, and I'd had my podcast, so I was constantly back and forth on both sides, getting on other podcasts, getting people on my podcast, etc.
Starting this business, we always ask entrepreneurs about a business plan. Do you see that as hot or not?
Not,
Okay.
no, not unless you're looking to go hunt down some cash.
Yeah.
And
If
you
you want to
obviously
raise
got-
$100 million, you
Yeah.
better have a
if
business.
you have an
plan.
idea and you can put it into play and it works and it generates revenue, just continue to refine that process. Nobody gives a rip about your business.
So did you have you didn't have a plan when you
I
started
had
this
3
business?
sheets of paper.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
3 sheets of paper. Pre-production, production, and post-production. That was exactly what our entire program would look like. I had 3 sheets of paper. I remember like it was yesterday. I just couldn't stop writing.
What go back to 2010, talk about what social media was hot then and what happened to it. What's hot in 2020? How'd that evolve?
I think Facebook has continued to lead the way. YouTube, I think after that. And then now LinkedIn is just the platform, in my opinion, where people are actually doing something. Facebook has become more of the backyard barbecue. LinkedIn is a perpetual networking event of business individuals that
I'm assuming because people actually have money on LinkedIn, right? Compared to like hitting the like button, it doesn't go anywhere,
Right.
right? Is that kind of what you're saying? It's like you get the same amount of likes on these other platforms, but like the amount of likes you get on LinkedIn, and then also the people reaching back out to you and actually real things, real outcomes. Is that
and more importantly, I've made friends with a lot of people that are crushing it on LinkedIn, and I've been able to do business with them and launch their podcast, and because of the weight that they hold, people like Shay Rowbottom on LinkedIn. I mean, she just posts something about starting a podcast, and people hunt me down and find me, and she doesn't even know who they are. I mean, that's influence, in my opinion, because I was like, I had Bob call me the other day, and she's like, I have no idea who that is. So I found a real niche there of being able to identify people that are crushing platforms and have a conversation and get them launched, because that's going to turn into more business, which is our core main source of new business is referrals, which, as you know, is the lifeblood of any business, but not always the easiest to maintain consistency with. But it's the road less traveled. But once you have strategic referral partners in place, then it makes it a little bit easier.
Okay. How about influencers, hot or not? But more the question is, how many people do you think are making their living being an influencer?
Well, my buddy Scott Eddy's a travel blogger, and he does extremely well for himself, and he travels the world. And when he's not traveling the world, he's living at the Aloft in downtown.
Past Shrimp Tank guest,
Yeah.
Scott. He was on the
Was he?
show.
Scott
we
was
love
on?
him.
Oh,
Yeah,
good.
he is awesome.
Good.
Yeah.
So Scott does it. Scott's doing it, and there are a lot of people that are out there actually doing it, and there's a lot of people actually that are out there talking about doing it and not actually doing it. So I think the world does exist there, and knowing guys like Scott and seeing people that have been doing the travel and food blogging space for some time before influencers were a cool thing. I mean, when I started this, I was I would pitch brands on like I'd have Ford drop off a car for a week. I had Perry Ellis sending me bow ties. I had a living room full of vitamin water, and so
And now you're going to have some rubber shrimp. Look at that.
I got some rubber shrimp, absolutely. So I like to say I was playing the influencer game before it became. Then once everybody starts to do it and become saturated, I'm out. It's kind of like social media. I don't want to get lost in the crowd.
So tell us a hot way to get good guests on podcasts.
LinkedIn.
How?
You go to LinkedIn, you search podcast host, and you go down the list. You start connecting with people. You find out who you've already connected to, and you check out their show or a podcast. If you ever need someone to need a guest on the show to talk about how to start a podcast, I'm your guy. It's great to be connected. And
I think he was trying to find.
But a big struggle for podcasts.
No, that's the example.
That's getting other podcasters. But are you saying actually going down the list of guests that you've had on your show, for example, then reaching out because hey, they're warm to, going on shows? Are you saying actually like the podcasts themselves, those guests, or the podcasters?
No, I'm saying if you're starting a podcast and you're looking to get on podcasts and you're looking to identify podcast guests, a good place to start is with podcasters.
Yeah,
I always
absolutely.
say. Yeah, I always say, but LinkedIn's probably one of the best places to be able to do it. I mean, you could post on Facebook or Instagram, who wants to be on my podcast? And I mean, there's not a shortage of people wanting their ego stroked.
Yeah, it could be a little nerve-wracking though, because podcast hosts kind of know what they're doing after a while, and all of a sudden you're like this rookie scared to interview someone. And,
Well,
and then all of a sudden you're like, oh my god, you're sweating on the first one. You're like, this person's got 200 episodes.
Yeah, you definitely want to ease your way into that process, and when you start identifying more, significant guests that have a little bit bigger of a following and platform, you want to have your ducks in a row.
So what about to piggyback that? The services where you literally pay a fee to just line up your schedule with guests. Is that hot or not?
It depends what the quality of the guests are. I haven't had any success doing it. I've burned through some cash hiring agencies to go and do it. We'll be doing it at the Podcast Launch Lab eventually. But I need to get excited about it. I need to get excited about saying, okay, what's it look like to have some? And I believe that comes with just a solid list of contacts. Really, that's where it starts. That's why let me continue to build my. I get
scared sometimes if they're paid to come on a show and they're going in a little circle, going on other shows. Do they really care? Right? I almost sometimes like the underdog, like the people who are so excited to come on the Shrimp Tank. It's their first podcast. Of course, ours is a business podcast. There's a huge network of business owners. It is their first time coming on a show. But I always get a little nervous, because it's like, okay, they'll come to the studio, then on to the next.
Right. I don't know about people being paid to be on podcasts. I don't know if I swim in those
there's some that do it.
Waters.
Yeah.
I know it does exist. I thought you were referring to like paying companies that are matchmakers.
Both. Sometimes they're matchmakers, and sometimes literally paying to get.
Well, there's a lot of new solutions popping up. I got a couple buddies that launched the platforms as of lately. You got Matchmaker.fm, you got Podbooker.com, you got Podmatch. So they're matchmakers. So you're looking to be a guest or looking for a guest. It's a matchmaking service for podcasters. So I haven't found any success yet because it's brand new. So everyone and their brother hits you up to be on your show, but when you're pitching to be on a show, it's crickets. So
and you stay away from certain types of guests. Do you advise your clients not to? Hey, be careful. These like lawyers. Like, be careful. Like they always have to come on. They always don't want to sign stuff. Then your content goes out. They ask you to remove everything because they're lawyers, and then you're like, just stay away from lawyers. I mean, that one sticks out to me.
I always say go after people that are smarter than you, cooler than you, have a bigger following than you, and doing more interesting things than you, and make sure that you've got a good dialogue with them and see if there's an opportunity to get them on the show. Usually by the time you get there, you know who you're dealing with and how it's all going to work. Doing a pre-call before an interview is always great, just to get an idea of what the guest is all about, and answer some questions and let them know any housekeeping rules that may be there, anything off limits for them that you don't want to talk about, and just get acclimated so you can make sure you're aligned. So I think that's probably the best advice I could give, is make sure you're aligned with people that you want to have on your podcast.
Sounds like the Shrimp Doctor over here is going to be on your podcast in the next couple of months.
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Smart guy.
Let's do it.
Oh, I'd love that. And because I think it'll actually be out there and be seen and heard and whatnot. Right. Shall we take a break?
Yeah, let's take a quick commercial break to hear from one of our sponsors.
Hiring is a challenge for any company. If you've had to cancel in-person career fairs due to coronavirus restrictions, or you're looking for ways to reach out to more qualified candidates, it's time to speak to the virtual hiring event professionals at Premier Virtual. Their best in-class virtual event platform has powered over 1,500 events. They have the experience and proven results to ensure your next career fair is a success. Visit premiervirtual.com or call 561-717-9717. 561-717-9717. Premier Virtual, the future-focused virtual event platform. This moves us into the next segment on Future Focus. And I have to ask, Sebastian, do you actually have any employees?
Yeah, we've got everybody's remote. I mean, that's the world we're living in now.
Okay,
so
well,
everyone is scattered across the country. Some are overseas too.
Okay.
I've acquired them through the world of freelancing. Thankfully, you hire 10 and you can keep one good one. That's kind of like employees.
How do you find them?
There's a number of different freelancer websites out there. It's just a vetting process. You got to go hunting.
Okay. Have you ever hosted a virtual hiring event or considered participating in something like that?
I've never considered hosting one. No, but I'm open.
To participating in a virtual. Okay,
I don't know what that is, but I'm open.
Well, basically,
Kind of like podcasting. What's the difference? Yeah, everyone's
Yeah, so-
online. They're over. It's kind of like a Zoom, but
it's a
imagine
recruiting event
Okay,
over Zoom. Yeah, pretty much.
imagine Clubhouse. Very similar, right? Everything is, Clubhouse is designed like you're going into the Mandalay Bay, and there's a big, auditorium, and that's the main speakers. But then there's little side rooms, side speakers. That's the same thing with virtual career fair.
Got it.
Right? You're able to pop your head into different rooms, waste no time, talk to the people in charge, learn about their business, and both you see if it's a good fit for each other.
Cool.
Are you contracting with these individuals, or do they actually employees of your organization?
Yeah, we contract mainly per month, per project, usually depending on because there's not always a need. There's not always something actually happening every minute of every day. So to have in the days of having, a traditional office space and employees and payroll and, all that stuff is really a thing of the past. I've just seen so many incredible companies just absolutely just explode, and everybody's remote. And then the way that you get together is you get together for offsites and retreats a few times a year, and everybody meets up in one specific area, and you rent a couple Airbnbs and get some whiteboards and talk about what's next. So that model works really, really well, and I think that that's the direction we want to go. I've always gone. I've never had a desire to go the traditional route of cubicles and the office space.
But do you envision as the company grows that you'll be actually taking on employees, or is it going to continue to be contractors?
There will be even though we're remote, I do think there is a need to have an actual podcast studio creative space, and that's where employees could potentially be a fit for. Yeah.
And how do you get to that one that you keep? What's some advice you have in looking at the 10 you're looking at and the one that you continue with? What have you found to work for you?
They're open. They're willing to give me feedback, and they get the job done. So it's real simple. If you say you're going to do it. And if you don't, we're just not going to work together. It's real simple. So that's kind of the freelancer rule, and you can test them out, which is great, and it's lower risk too. So that's the way. But the vision could be. I never really know where it's going to go. I have no idea. But as it stands right now, scaling this thing remotely seems to make the most sense. But I am open. We opened a studio last year, and it was an executive suite that I converted into a podcast studio. And the vision for that was to have people come in and rent the studio space, and our students be able to go through the program and record their stuff, and it's a creative space for me to create my content in. And then it just dawned on me that nobody goes to offices anymore. At least at that time they weren't. And the only purpose that that the studio was serving was stroking my ego daily. Like, this place is awesome, and it's just me.
I can see a collaboration with a tech hub, right? All these tech hubs are opening all across South Florida right now.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of tech coming down here. And of course, it would be easier for them to collaborate with one of them, but then also the other people then to collaborate with you, kind of a combo. And then that way it's not like a dedicated space that you got to run, 7 days a week, fill it up to get your money back, versus the ego part where you pop in there 2 or 3 times a week. And with your expertise, it's a win-win for all parties.
Right. I'm working on that right now. I'm thinking about launching a new show specifically about Miami tech and everything that's happening down there. Some exciting stuff taking place. So I want to break into that tech space. I was part of it, kind of the startup community over in Wynwood several years back.
I would just throw it in a hotel. You're right. I saw the Wynn, hotel in Vegas. They threw it right in the lobby.
Right.
Right. How cool would it be? Like, go pitch a hotel, and just right there you have a huge podcast studio.
Well, that's
right
the fun
there,
part.
And you can collaborate, and then there's no rent.
Right.
Right.
Your
Maybe they didn't pay you.
Your location in Miami, is there any you like living there? Or is there any connection that makes it a better place to have a podcast? Do what you do?
No, and especially now with COVID and everything, everyone's been able to figure out how to operate from home regardless. Nobody needs to actually go anywhere. I think people do want to go somewhere now. Mm-hmm. I've just found that there's enough logistics involved with starting a podcast. The last thing we really need is to get a calendar date for an in-person on the calendar. Like getting people under one roof these days is like walking cats.
So
why? Because you can call. It's like, don't call me. You can text me. So we're just living in this convenience. Which is where we're at. It's just how it is. And if some people are old school and want to meet face to face. Listen, if we're gonna do business for sure, like 100%, you guys are jumping on board with us, and we're gonna get your show launched. I'd be more than happy to meet with you face to face. But to get to know, and we can do that on FaceTime.
What percentage of podcasts are in person? I don't even know that. Even though we do an in-person one, I don't know.
I always
5%, 10%. Are we?
I don't even
Are
know.
we unique here in the Shrimp Tank? I don't even know.
I think so, and I think every business will have a podcast studio in their physical location eventually. I really do. I really think there'll be some sort of presence, some sort of multimedia presence in a business.
Well, every business needs some type of social media. So of course
content. You're right. Content creation.
It ties directly in.
Right.
Or setting up a real studio in the movie theater across the hall.
For you, as you're saying.
Yeah. Well, the
cool.
College of Business.
Nice.
Yeah, we have a lot of. We have a podcast. The college has a podcast, and we need to make it a little bit more formal. Plus, we have a movie studio, movie theater sitting over there. We used to have a master's program in film, and it's not being used. So that's where a studio might go.
Cool.
So we don't
outdoor
have to
podcast, just live. Has anyone you've ever met done just right on a lawn where people could actually witness the podcast going on, and there's actual speakers.
What's going on over there?
And they're like, oh, let's go listen to that live podcast. I don't know.
Is that kind of
I'm asking you.
like the guy with the cross in front of the Miami Arena, screaming, the world's ending? Yeah, I haven't seen the outdoor podcast. I don't know if the wind, especially South Florida, little too many weather variables to work with there to say, let's go slap some speakers on the corner and start a podcast.
Talk about Clubhouse. How will that impact podcasting in general?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen with Clubhouse. I know that they were the first ones out of the gate to be able to introduce this whole social audio landscape, if you will. But the audio era that we're already in with AI, with podcasting, social audio, live social audio like Clubhouse just comes in to complement that. I think that the problem that Clubhouse is going to have is that they're not the only guys in town. That Facebook's working on something. Twitter launched Twitter Spaces, and there's going to be other platforms out there that are going to provide an audio solution. And when that happens, they won't be the only guys in town, which is cool. I'm more focused on how is this going to be used best? How's it going to complement podcasting? Well, it can be a before the show, after the show. Great place to find guests, great place to meet new connections, great place to become the go-to source for what you do because you can speak intelligently about specific topics and rooms that you're actually in. So, and that's what we've been doing with Mark Savant. He's got a really good thing going on.
Yeah, he's crushing it. I love Mark.
Yeah, he's been doing a great thing on Saturday mornings, 10 a.m. It's become really a Saturday thing where a bunch of other podcasters and content creators decided, hey, let's just support each other. So when I have a room, Mark jumps in. He has a room, I jump in, and there's probably half a dozen of us that support each other with that. I think it's evolving. There's a lot of people that are, I've made more fun of podcasting or Clubhouse rather on TikTok, just based on these overnight millionaires, allegedly.
For us, we've gotten a decent amount of guests from it. I pop on there on my commute to work or my commute home. I chat for a little bit, and they happen to be from South Florida, and they run a business, so it's easy. Like, hey, we should chat. Instead of being this big group,
Great place to
one-on-one,
find
and
guests.
you find some decent guests. And of course, a lot of people are on there, hoping to monetize. Everyone's trying to become the next famous person on Clubhouse.
DM
and,
me.
Of course, it's very hard to make money unless you have a business. Lining that up, of course, which you do, Mark Savant does, so it makes perfect sense. Well, we're going to take a quick commercial break, hear from one of our sponsors. When we get back, we'll jump to our Plead the Fifth segment of the show.
Are you ready to make your indelible impression? DeRay & Company is an award-winning, full-service public relations and marketing agency with offices in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and Aspen, Colorado. With practice areas in business, real estate, cannabis, nonprofit, legal, and lifestyle, DeRay & Company is fully equipped to help clients reach their goals with strategies that are on point. Whether it's public relations, social media, digital marketing, content development, or other services, DeRay & Company delivers results for business owners that address their business goals and reach their targeted audience. To learn more about DeRay & Company and our services, visit DeRayandCompany.com. DUREEANDCOMPANY.com.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Shrimp Tank. As a reminder, you catch all these 150 episodes at shrimptankpodcast.com. Catch all of our past guests on LinkedIn, of course. Reach out to them. You heard Sebastian say everyone is on LinkedIn. It is hot, and they're checking their inboxes, and all you guys could do business. Just listen to their show, and they'll tell you what's up, and then reach on out. So, Sebastian, this segment of the show is called Plead the Fifth. So we're going to ask you a question, and if you do not want to answer it, you just say, I plead the fifth. But then after that, you got to figure a way around the question because you only say that one time. Okay? So what's the most embarrassing thing you've ever done on TikTok?
I haven't done anything embarrassing yet. I'm vulnerable. I did. I started doing these motivational clips with sappy music, encouraging people. So I've been vulnerable, but I have not been embarrassed.
So what's a piece of content you had to take down? You posted it and you're like, I'm in trouble. Got to get it off.
I'd say probably political. I learned that about 4 years ago. I learned that lesson. I never did it again.
What happened? Everyone's like, not Sebastian. You know,
Well, the problem was that Trump got elected, and I had met him like 3 years prior at the PGA tournament, the WGC down in Miami, and we had some dialogue with his team. I had not directly connected with him, but I definitely had connected with his team. So before all this, so I had a great picture of him and I, it's high definition, the whole nine. So when he got elected, I posted, "Welcome to the White House, Mr. Trump," and the internet just lost its mind. I remember going, let me just count how many Facebook friends I have right now, just for fun, and then count it at the end of the day. And that's when I quickly realized, and I had a friend and mentor call me and say, hey, so here's the deal. Like, do you like new business? And I'm like, of course I do. Well, listen, when we talk about politics, you eliminate 50% of the opportunity that could be available of people that want to do business with you because you've chosen one side or the other, because you're not going to win the political, the religious conversation because everyone has their own point of view on it. So just some word to the wise. And I just learned that. I just decided to stay in my own lane and let people do what they want to do and say what they want to say and whatever it is. But I'm not a Trump fan. Disclosure.
Well, you just alienated 50% of the audience.
I listen. I'm not endorsing Trump. Is what I meant. That's what I'm not.
Don't worry. Not many people get to 58th minute on the show, so you're good.
Anyway, what is the most disgusting and disturbing topic for a podcast that someone's approached you with? And did you go through with it, or did you say no?
Yeah, I had a guy wanted to put his podcast on an adult site that I didn't even know they hosted audio content. But I'm not familiar with that world. But I had to give him a hard no on that.
He wanted to do an adult.
He wanted no. He's like, I thought, I want to have, I want to record the episode. I want to have strippers and everything on video. And I'm like,
sounds like the next Playboy.
I have a 20-year-old daughter, and I just can't sleep at night being able to take a project like that on. So I'm going with a hard no.
Are those hot shows? Or is that like a thing?
Not in that world. I don't know. I have no idea.
Staying away.
We're about to have the most humiliating moment right here. Yeah,
I don't know, like Howard Stern did it, right? It's kind of like a play on Howard Stern.
Howard, here we go again with the comparisons of like not even unrealistic. Like Stern also got his hand slapped a significant amount of times. A couple.
Of course. Okay, let's talk about the most disappointing podcast guest you've had on your show. Who was it? Name that person and why.
I don't know who that person's name is. I forgot about them on purpose. But I learned a lesson that if you don't do a pre-call and screen people out and better understand. Actually, I haven't had that many, because I screen mine out pretty good. It's the shows I've been on where I get down and I'm like, well, I'll never get that half hour back. Not you guys.
It was an hour for us.
Exactly. Exactly. So
you don't do many in-persons. There you go.
Right. No, I being a guest on, I've looked back and said I'm never going to get that half hour back. But then my guest, I try to screen them out to the best of my ability.
But what was wrong with it? What was
wrong,
the story that you had?
It really wasn't a podcast interview. It was just like I don't know if he'd been following me. He was a fan of my content or what he did, but he was just kind of wild through the whole time. I'm like, what do you want to talk about? He's like, whatever you want. And I'm like, okay. How about hot air balloons?
What was the most difficult client for you to work with, Sebastian, and how did you help them, overcome what was holding them back?
Financial advisors, because of the compliance. I'd rather wake up in the morning, punch myself in the face, eat my pillow, and eat broken glass, than have to deal with financial advising compliance ever again. But that's just me.
Okay.
Well, Sebastian, I'm a financial advisor. This is hysterical over here.
If you were going to write a book, called "The Shrimp Tank Sucks," what would be the subtitle?
If you don't like shrimp,
That was good. I like
Yeah,
that.
that's good. Comeback, sure.
Shrimp being small businesses, right?
right.
Tell us a situation where someone used you to get to your contacts, right? You know a lot of people out there, and people love going. I mean, we get this stuff on the Shrimp Tank. We have 150 past entrepreneurs in South Florida. I mean, that is very unique, right? And we sniff it out sometimes. We're like, something's up here, right? I'm not letting that person, onto this platform, but people sneak through. So, tell us a situation where someone snuck through and later to find out they're banned. Like, we have people banned on the Shrimp Tank. They're not coming to our events in the future. They screwed us over, and I know you definitely have some.
Yeah, I think we live and learn through those scenarios. First person that comes to mind is Gary. Because people know that you have access to Gary, or that you know him. That anyone and their brother will run over a small child in a room to get to them. Not literally.
He texts me every day. What do you mean we all have access?
Right. So
his auto text messages.
It's not like I
Sure.
could call him and say, hey, you want to talk? But the fact of like, hey, I've had that happen several times throughout the years. Of hey, can you at least make an introduction? Can you maybe ask? Can you ask for this? And that's probably been the main. Yeah, Gary's been like the main. Well, but I've also been beating the Gary drum for 10 years too. Before it was the wine days, before it was even popular and such a phenomenon. But I would say, yeah, people that think they wanted to initiate a relationship and then come to find out they were just trying to get to somebody within my network. Specifically, Gary's the first thing comes to mind, which is always a hard no, because I said, why would I introduce you to them is my question. People, the audacity of some people.
Yeah, so take that one step further. You mentioned LinkedIn is the one of the better ways to connect with people these days.
Yeah.
So what was the worst LinkedIn pitch you got? For me, so someone DM'd me and said, your profile picture sucks, but I can help you make it better. I would say, great. I hope you're getting a lot of business going around telling people they're ugly. What was it for you?
It worked. Look at that.
I like to rip people that send me direct messages and pitch me on LinkedIn, so I'm not a real good example because, and when I say rip them, it's just, hey, so maybe we can start with hello next time. How's your day? What do you do? Instead of just shoving your offer down my throat immediately. LinkedIn's a lot. I'd say YouTube is a little bit more in the lane of complete, all-out, utter verbal abuse in the comments. Yeah, we're just, I get hammered on YouTube. But these are keyboard warriors, And to note, if you're watching this right now and you're scared about what people think and you're not creating content because you're concerned that Fatty Pants 82 at AOL is calling your content crap, remember that they probably live with their mom in their basement and they're sitting in their boxer shorts behind a keyboard with no profile photos. So I don't really give those a second thought.
If I wanted to learn how to start my podcast, how much would it cost me to contract with you to teach me?
Our flagship program starts at $5,000.
Okay.
And that's our 90-day program to get you to the finish line with your first 7 episodes. So you're looking at about a $5,000 investment.
Okay.
Sometimes some people have their ducks in a row, but not all of them. They're missing like 2 ducks, so they need me. So they'll hire me for a month, and we got a 30-day coaching program that helps them get to the finish line. That's a little bit lower of a price point, but that's really the only two. I come from the school of, if you call me looking for oranges, I'm going to convince you on why you need apples. And if you really want oranges, I'm going to send you to the guy that has oranges. But, I've really tried to stay in that. Instead of, we've got 97 different podcast launch solutions. I used to do that. It was like, hey, which one do you want to do? You want to start with 2 episodes, 5 episodes? And everyone's always going to start with 2.
Have you ever had to just tell someone after they launch, like, podcasting is not for you?
No.
And no?
No, we
Hasn't
get
been
that.
one person that you're like, no one can really understand you. You have a deep accent. It's just not working.
We're gonna resolve all of that on our pre-call. So before we're gonna even do anything, or make
Okay, we gotta get them to plead the fifth. Who's out of the 97? Who's the worst podcaster? Say their name, or plead the fifth.
I'm gonna plead the 5th.
There, gotcha.
The 97 what? I'm sorry.
The recent launches. We launched 97 shows recently.
Oh, okay.
Right? Is that what you said? 97.
No, not recently. The goal is 100.
Okay.
The goal is 100, but
So the worst podcaster you've ever had to deal with is what you're pleading the fifth on.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
I'll protect the integrity of him. It's not his fault. It's his mom's fault.
Is he still doing it?
Yeah, he's killing it.
Has anyone not paid
Killing
you?
it.
I mean, tell us about that world. Like, people are, they hire services. they pay you some, and then they keep going. At some point, money has to come in, and they don't pay their bill. Anything like that?
No,
happen in your
everything's
business?
we pay to
It's all
play.
prepay?
It's all pay to play. Pay to play.
And you don't take a percentage of what they might make in their
Not yet. We will, though.
book.
Not yet. We will. So what it'll look like is you've launched your show. You've been with us. You're in the Podcast Launch Lab Podcast Network, and we're offering you other services too that help you produce your show, that help you create content, that help you get booked. We play matchmaker with advertisers and sponsors and biz dev opportunities where I envision our team being able to go out and structure that deal and come back to you and say, hey, listen, this company wants to pay you X a month. We're going to take 20%
recurring
of
revenue
that.
seems clear the way to scale this, I think.
Yeah.
Is it hot to do ads right now for your podcast? Right, a lot of
It
people
is. On a
naturally just
lower level,
they
I think.
grow by having other guests on their show. They do social media posts, but what about that next lane where, hey, we could boost this thing on Facebook, we could boost it everywhere.
Why not? There's never been a more exciting time to spend $1 a day, $30 a month, and reach 5,000 people. You've never been able to go and do that before. So I would suggest Facebook, boosting a post on Facebook, promoting a post on Instagram. Very simple, $1 a day, $2 a day, $5 a day. Pinterest, another great platform to market your podcast episodes. You can take advantage of a tremendous amount of traffic that's there. They have a paid ads platform too, and again, you can play around with it. $5-10 a day, test it out for a couple days. If it hits and you get more downloads, ding, 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 you figured out your ad strategy. It doesn't need to be on a large agency level, I think, unless your show has grown to that point where you're at 10, 15,000 downloads and you're looking to get up to 100.
I just had two more. Do you have an exit strategy for this business? Have you thought about
Absolutely.
that?
So as soon as once we've established the Podcast Launch Lab network of shows, and we're offering ancillary services. Then we've got several. Our initial entry point is the launch program. Then we put them in the network. Then we're offering ongoing production services and guest booking, research, advertisers, sponsors, and then we now have a monetized podcast network. In addition to being a podcast agency that's been monetized, so we've got shows that we've launched, and now these shows have grown and been able to monetize themselves. So we're able to go wave that flag around and say, hey, listen, we've got a podcast network we've built that is monetized that we've helped build too on there. And then we're going to sell to Spotify for between 654 and 658 million.
And what's the year, time
Right.
frame?
I'd like to get this done in 5 years.
Okay, sounds like a business plan to me.
Yeah. Hey, it could be.
What is your most popular podcast that you've helped launch? How many downloads?
Shay
do you get?
Rowbottom,
Okay.
LinkedIn All-Star. Do you know Shay?
Yeah,
No,
Shay was
she's
on our
guest.
Zoom fireside chat when COVID hit.
Okay,
So
yeah,
we
Shay.
got the opportunity to interview for a little bit.
She came out of the gates at 15,000 downloads the first day, I think. And that just goes to show that when you've already got an existing network and you're already a powerhouse, when you drop a funnel, when you drop a platform like a podcast into your funnel, people respond. They want more of you. They want more of that peek behind the curtain. They want more of that access. And I believe that the podcasting allows you to do it. And it's going to, as subscription stuff continues to unpack, it's already happened over on YouTube. As that stuff starts to go, people are going to continue. They want to be closer to you and have more access to you. And they can do that, but there's an entry fee.
Last thing I wanted to ask is when you come to this is an important question to me because I'm coming to the end of my career, believe it or not. How do you want to be remembered as an entrepreneur when you get to the point where you've got to the end of your entrepreneurial career?
Sebastian left people different when he interacted with them, whether it was in an airport or it was a coffee shop or someone hired him or it was a friend or whatever it was. I want people's experience of me to be lasting because we had a conversation and I'll never forget that conversation. And he left me different. And I think that's, we're creating a legacy for generations to come by creating content here. And I think there's a tremendous amount of responsibility around that legacy and the content we're creating and what we're leaving behind so that my daughter 20 years from now, whatever it may be, can look back and show her kids, listen, this is who your grandfather is. This is what he built over the past 25 or 30 years. But I think leaving that lasting impression of leaving people different and having a lasting impression, because money comes and goes and material things come and go and success. But I believe that happiness is a destination that we arrive at when we decide that we want to be there. So, and I believe that people we meet and connect with help contribute to that happiness. So,
Cool. Gonna make me cry over here. I got the tears running down my.
Cue the Oscar music.
But we have noticed that in the shrimp tank. When we have families in here, 2, 3, father, son scenarios. When they leave the studio, just that they're just left with this, story that they could share, with generations. So Totally agree. Well, thanks for coming out to the Shrimp Tank today, Sebastian. For audience
great to be
listening, if they want to find you, what are the best routes?
That's right. So first off, if you think about starting a podcast, you're like, I want to check this out. I want to see what this is all about. I do have a free training that I give everybody and anybody to better understand how to start a podcast in 20 minutes or less. And you can also schedule a call with myself or somebody on my team at that same resource, and that's podcastlaunachlabnow.com. So you type in your name and email, you get into the free training, you watch that, and you think, you know what, I need some help with this. Then you have the opportunity to book a call with myself or somebody on my team, and we'd be more than happy. I'll talk to anybody for 10, 15 minutes about their crazy podcast idea, and it's either going to be a hot or not.
Well, thanks again for coming out to the Shrimp Tank.
Thank you, guys. I really
We'll be
appreciate the
back
opportunity.
4 p.m. next Thursday. Take care, everybody.
Bye, guys.
I've been feeling like a shark in a shrimp tank. Big fish, small pond in the shrimp tank. When it take a swim, only option is to win. In the murky water, not a thought of giving in. Welcome to the shrimp tank. Doing big things, chasing big dreams. Yeah, it's all real. This life's all that it seems. All the chicks scream, all the dudes yell. This